رسول الله وآله وصحبه أملا أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. First and foremost, I'd definitely like to thank the community and both in view for this opportunity. I am 100% the last person that should ever sit on this, especially in front of so many of my own teachers here, the Imam Rauf, Sheikh Hassan here, and Sheikh Fuad. So I do ask your forgiveness for that. But unfortunately it is what it is, because Brother Tanveer put me on the schedule and you can't say no to Brother Tanveer. So in light of the new year starting for the Hijri calendar, I wanted to talk about something very important. And what I wanted to talk about, if you did get the email, you already know. But if you didn't get the email, what I wanted to talk about is something that concerns an emotion we all feel. And that's the emotion of love. And what's interesting about the emotion of love is that if it's used in the right way, it can take an individual so far in terms of their connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in terms of their connection to their family, their friends, their co-workers, and their overall relationship with this world. But, as we all know, the emotion of love can also be corrupted, right? And it can be used in a way that can destroy an individual's heart. So on the topic of love, what I wanted to talk about today is one of the most important forms of love we should have. Second to the love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is the love for the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And this love is so important that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah At-Tawbah, that قل إن كان آباؤكم وأبناؤكم وإخوانكم وأزواجكم وعشيرتكم. That he tells Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to tell the people that if you love your fathers, if you love your sons, if you love your brothers, your mothers, your wives, your daughters, whatever it is, and then the ayah continues with a few more examples of your wealth and your house and things like that. If you love all of these things more than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger, then essentially at the end of the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is cursing these individuals. He is stating that there is destruction planned for these individuals. Essentially what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing is He's giving us a reality check. He's telling us that if all of these things come to your mind before the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then you are an individual who will not achieve success in this world. Because your priorities are not aligned. Your priorities are not where they should be. So then, just to quickly go into it, how do we attain this love? Right? We hear so many khutbahs and halaqas, we listen to so many lectures that people constantly tell us, love Rasulullah, love Rasulullah, love Rasulullah. But from a logical perspective and from a human perspective, it might be difficult to love an individual you've never met, right? It might be difficult to love an individual you've never known, you've never spoken to, you've never seen, you've never heard from. It's very difficult to love an individual like that, correct or no? And you look at so many communities, right, who have the issue of parents abandoning their children. So many communities where you have fathers walk away from their families. And then when you ask their children, what do you think about your father? Majority of the times they hate them. Or majority of the times they have no opinion. Because they never knew them. How am I supposed to love a figure I've never known? So then on that, how do we attain the love of Rasulullah, the love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Is to get to know him. Is to get to learn about him. To understand his life and to understand what he did for us. And that level of love can only be attained through implementation. You can only learn so much about an individual, and it can only go so deep inside your heart. But for us to truly understand, why did Rasulullah ﷺ teach us the things he did? Why should his life, or why will his life make that much of an impact on mine? Well, in order to see that change, in order to see that impact, in order to see the effect of his actions upon our lives, we have to implement his actions. We have to do the things He taught us, the way He taught us. Because if we don't do it that way, then we'll never understand the true reason as to why He's doing this. We'll never be affected by His life. His life will never enter our hearts. Take this for example. I like to play basketball. And in high school, I used to play on the team. I was not the best, and we were not the best team, but I played, and it was a good experience, alhamdulillah. I got to put that on my college application that I played on the basketball team. They don't need to know how good I was. But let's take, for example, a basketball team that has bright talent on the team. Everyone's taller than 6 foot, close to 7 foot. Everyone's athletic, everyone's well built. And the coach tells this basketball team that I'm now going to teach you the game. And for about 6 months to a year, he locks them in the classroom and he teaches them the game. In the classroom, with a whiteboard. He teaches them how to play, he teaches them how to dribble. He teaches them different plays and maneuvers and the functions of the game. But the thing is, throughout the 6 months in the year, he never handed them a basketball. He never took them onto the basketball court. All the education of the sport that was given to them was locked up into a classroom. They never got a chance to actually play. Now come 1 year and they have to play their first game. They have to play their first game. Mind you, this team has never set foot on a court. I asked the question to all of you, do you think this team will win their first game? Anyone? Sheikh Hassan, do you think they'll win?
Maybe, depending on the team.
Depending on the team, true. Depending on who they play, maybe. But if they're playing, for example, a team that repeatedly became a state champion, do you think they'll win? No. Because the issue was, no matter how much they were educated about the sport, no matter how much they were told that this is what you're supposed to do, this is what you're not supposed to do, this is how you do it, they never got a chance to experience it. They never got a chance to implement the things that they learned. They never got a chance to put it to action. They were taught to talk the talk, but they never taught to walk the walk. And that's why everything that they learned became meaningless. Because at the one point where it mattered, they didn't know what to do. And this shouldn't be our relationship with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This should not be our relationship with His teachings and the things that He's given to us. Because believe it or not, the religion of Islam and the way the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was concerned about us understanding the religion of Islam, he cared more about how we lived Islam. He cared more about how we acted or how we carried ourselves than he cared about how much we actually knew about Islam. He cared about how much we experienced it, how much we actually lived it. That's what was more important. Because if you consider how many times the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ actually held formal lectures and talked to educate people on a regular basis, it was on Monday, right? In the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's week. On Mondays, he would hold a lecture for the sisters. On Thursday, he would hold a lecture for the brothers. And on Friday, there would of course be the Jummah khutbah. That's it. 3 times a week. 3 times a week teaching individuals who've never even heard of the concept of Islam. 3 times a week to teach individuals whose life before Islam was drastically different than what it is now. He only dedicated 3 days out of 7 to actually formally educate. Because the rest of the days, he was more concerned about making sure my followers lived this religion. This religion was a part of their life. It didn't just live within their heads, but it lived within their hearts. Even Aisha radiallahu anha, right? We've heard this story so many times. That individual came to her and asked me, teach me a hadith. Teach me something, right? So she teaches this individual something. Next day he comes back. Teach me another thing. And what does Aisha radiallahu anha say to this individual? She asked him that before I teach you something, have you acted upon what you learned yesterday? And the individual said no. So she told him, why would I want to be responsible for teaching you something else that you have yet to act upon again? Essentially stating that go and act upon what I just taught you and then can come back for more. Because education isn't fully fortified within our lives until we understand how to act upon that. And that's how our relationship should be to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is, for a lot of individuals, myself included, is what's missing, right? We take a lot of lectures, we learn, we go to classes, we listen to videos, we listen to podcasts, we read books. But attaining so many levels and volumes of knowledge can only go so far if you do not apply it. And what's beautiful about the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that in every walk of his life, he was a living and breathing example for us. That if you are a father or a parent, he was a father and a parent. If you were a brother and a sibling, he was a brother and a sibling. If you were a businessman, he was a businessman. If you were a leader, he was a leader. At even some points, he filled the position of a general for war. There are so many roles that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because of his position, he had to fill. For each and every single one of us, there is something, some example that we can utilize, that we can connect with, reflect with, and relate with. But what we have to do is look for it. Yesterday, there was a class by Al-Maghrib Institute on the life of Malcolm X. And it was taught by Imam Umar Sulaiman. And in that class, he was saying how, Imam Umar Sulaiman was saying how he recently went to a prison. I'm forgetting the name of the prison. It was a maximum security prison. He went to that prison to go give dawah, right? He went to go talk to the prisoners about Islam. And he said what was so interesting about the library in the prison, right? He said there's a really small section for the Bible. He said there's a little bit of a larger section for the Quran. And he said there were bookshelves dedicated to the biography of Malcolm X. And he said, why is this important? What does this mean? He said that these individuals, they didn't have access to a seerah book. They had access to the Quran. But learning and reading the Quran could only have gone so far for these individuals. They need to see it in action. They need to experience it. So they dedicated their lives to reading the biography of Malcolm X. And these people in this prison, they converted to Islam. A majority of them are converting to Islam because of this biography of Malcolm X. Because they weren't just reading it, just to read it. Within the prison system, these individuals who, on a normal society basis, we might look down upon. These individuals were working to instill the actions of Malcolm X and the actions of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam through what they were taught from this book by Malcolm X to live and breathe Islam. And that was enough to connect them. They were implementing the actions of an individual who wasn't even the Prophet. Yes, Malcolm X was a brilliant and amazing figure. We should all take time to learn about him. But they got close to Islam. They developed their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just by studying and implementing the life of Malcolm X. So imagine how much more different, how much more impactful, how much more beautiful our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can be if we work on implementing the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And now that we understood this, right, we understand that this is the action that is required upon all of us. What is the motivational factor to act upon this? Why should I, right, besides all the reasons we learned from so many lectures, besides the reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to, why should I go out of my way to learn about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? And the only reason, honestly, I could think about to answer this question is that you owe it to him. Believe it or not, brothers and sisters, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam cared about us at that time just as much as he cared about his own living companions who were around with him. What's my evidence for this? Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Anas bin Malik report that one time he was sitting with the companions. And he told the companions that I wish I could meet my brothers. And the companions, they kind of looked at him and they're a little bit confused. They said, Ya Rasulullah, we're right here. Like, what do you mean, I wish I could meet my brothers? We're right here sitting with you. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, no, you are just my companions. My brothers are those who will come after me and believe in me without ever having to see me. This Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he yearned to meet us. He yearned to meet and see us. Individuals who, I at least can say for myself, are nowhere near the Sahaba. Who am I to deserve that level of attention? But an individual who he's never met before, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam yearned for that relationship. So brothers and sisters, he loved us. And you know what's sad about a relationship like that? What is sadder than a father loving children who don't love them back? A husband or a wife loving their significant other who doesn't love them back? A friend who loves another friend, but that friend doesn't actually love them back? How sad and painful of a feeling is that? That if you're an individual that cares so much for someone, you give them your wealth, you give them your blood, you give them your sweat, you give them as much time as you possibly can, but what you find out is that individual